Welcome to Education Forum. I'm Herman Badillo, Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the City University. The improvement of education affects all New Yorkers. This program will focus on the key educational issues and challenges before us all. My guest today is Dr. Richard Mills, who is the Commissioner of Education of the State of New York and was appointed by the Board of Regents in August 1995. And that title carries with it President of the University of the State of New York. Commissioner Mills received a bachelor's degree from Middleborough College in 1966, a master's in American history from Columbia University, and a doctorate in education from Columbia University. Prior to being the New York Commissioner, he was Vermont Education Commissioner, and he also worked in education and other areas with Governor Tom Kean of New Jersey. Commissioner, one of the things that people do not really understand is that you are not appointed by the governor. You are appointed by the Board of Regents. Would you tell us something about that structure?
Well, the Board of Regents is a very ancient structure in New York. It goes back to the 1780s. You can believe that. It's right back to the time, even before the time of the Constitution.
And how is the Board of Regents selected, and how many members are there, and where do they come from?
It's a 16-member board. They represent all walks of life. They serve without compensation, and they're appointed by the legislature. And the Board of Regents appoints me. So
therefore, the governor has nothing to do with your appointment. In that sense, you are probably one of the few commissioners in this state, if not the only one, who's totally independent, right?
Well, it's certainly, in terms of appointing power, yes, independent. But obviously, the regents, the governor, and I, and the legislature, you have to work together. You simply can't have good education policy if there isn't that kind of collaboration. We've built that over the years.
Now, Diane Ravitch was on this program a little while ago, and she said that comparing the educational achievement of students in the United States with those of other countries, she found that we were doing very well up to the 4th grade. We were doing fine up to the 8th grade. When we got to the 12th grade, that is high school, the only countries that were behind us were Cyprus and South Africa, and that's embarrassing. And she said the same thing applies to the state of New York. What is your reaction to that?
Well, these international results are certainly true, and it's very troubling. This country has focused for a long time on the basics, on reading, things of that nature.
But you see, what bothers me about that is it seems to suggest that the longer the student stays in school in this country, the worse it is, because we're ahead of other countries in the 4th grade. They catch up to us in the 8th grade, and they pass us by the 12th grade. How is it possible that we lose ground the longer the student stays in school?
We haven't really demanded that all students in the higher grades perform at the same level. We separate children. We give some a rigorous curriculum and others a weaker one, high expectations for some, and much lesser expectations for others.
Is that what they call the tracking system?
It's a feature of tracking, certainly, but it really boils down to the kind of expectations that we have. Now, the Regents have changed that. All students now have to pass Regents exams.
Okay, now, let's talk about that, because one of the hallmarks of your administration is having standards for all the kids. When do the Regents, the requirement of passing the Regents exam for all high school students, when does it come into effect?
Well, for the class of 2004, they will all have to pass 5 Regents exams at a 55 level. By the next year, the class of 2005, or the 9th graders entering in 2001, they will have to pass 5 exams at a 65.
Now, what about the students who graduate this June? What standards will they have?
Well, the same standards are in effect, but we're introducing the tests one at a time. If you're in the 11th grade right now, to graduate, you have to pass one exam, the English Regents exam. You can take it 3 times, 4 times actually, but you must pass. So we're adding one exam a year and very rapidly raising these expectations.
One of the criticisms that I've heard is lowering the passing grade to 55, because it seems that that is reducing the standards. Generally, in most schools were used to 65 as being the passing grade. Why was it lowered to 55?
It's not a lowering at all. Right here in this city, 19% of the students get Regents diplomas. I mean, there's a real divide between those who get a rigorous education and everyone else. In effect, we're kind of reaching a ladder out and saying, come on, rise up to this higher stage, and let's move on from there. We have to walk a fine line between making it impossible and making it too slow to bring these standards into effect.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the situation in the city is a tragedy because only 48% of the students graduate from high school, which means 52% of them don't. And of the 48%, as you say, only 19% get a Regents diploma, which to me is a real diploma. So we have a long way to go before we can get the young people to have a real high school diploma, which to me, and as far as I know, to the whole world, is a minimum if you're going to be able to perform. And it seems to me that the problem starts at the elementary grades. What are you doing on that, with the 3rd, 4th, and other grades?
Well, the last couple of weeks, months really, the whole state has been focused on the 4th grade. New exam, much more rigorous. There's been a tremendous amount of conversation about it. We sent 4.5 million copies of the test questions out to parents through their newspapers. We've had practice tests out, and as we came closer and closer to the date, you could almost feel the state quiver.
Yeah, there was a lot of turmoil, I remember, about
yeah.
papers missing and problems in the different
That's
schools.
not the issue. What was happening is that people were talking about reading and writing. What was happening is that they were not only talking about it, they were actually doing it. So I think this was a catalytic event that really caused people to focus on expectations for young people as never before.
Okay, before the exam, say last year, what percentage of the students in New York City, the 4th grade, were reading and writing at the 4th grade level?
Well, we didn't have a 4th grade test in effect.
Generally.
We had a 3rd grade test, and about 30% of the students were reading below the most minimal level. So you could look at the positive and say, well, it's close to 70%, but I think you need to look at the failure rate. There are about a third of the students who are not performing at the most minimum level.
If a third of the students who took the 4th grade test a couple of weeks ago, if they fail the test, what happens to them?
Well, don't jump to conclusions because
No,
you don't know.
Assuming that...
No, but you don't know what's happened.
Okay, but I know, for example, that in Chicago, when they abolished social promotion and they established gates, educational gates,
Sure.
1/3 of the students failed, and they had to be left back and given assistance. So 1/3 is not unusual.
And in fact, what they did in Chicago was to have massive use of after school and summer school and so on. Chancellor Crew has, I think he increased summer school by 1/3 last year. So I think the city is moving in the right direction. I'm very eager to see what these 4th grade test results are about. I've told everybody that I think the initial results will be low because the test is deliberately more challenging, but they have certainly been in motion.
When will the students know the results?
Expect to know them late April.
Okay. Now what happens if they fail the test to those students?
The chancellor has said that he wants to end social promotion. He wants to do that in a couple of years. The state has not said that this particular test is a gatekeeper, but it's clearly a step toward the curriculum that leads right to the Regents level work, and that's a big gatekeeper. If you don't pass that, you don't graduate. So I think the pressure is going to be on. The chancellor
wants to wait till at least the year 2000. I don't want to wait at all. I've been for eliminating social promotion, as you know, for decades. And now we have a situation where the President of the United States wants to eliminate social promotion. The Governor of the State of New York and the Mayor of the City of New York also want to eliminate social promotion. So maybe this will hasten that process.
I don't think you'll find any real defenders of social promotion. I mean, that pretty much died as soon as the standards were put in place. As soon as we said all students will pass Regents exams, there's no percentage in allowing this to continue. And
the President proposes an even stiffer requirement, because he says in order to get federal assistance for certain issues like teacher training and others, it can only be made available to areas which have eliminated social promotion. So that will really put a squeeze on the Chancellor.
Yeah. Well, I think it shouldn't be, I don't think it should be about putting the squeeze on anybody. Everyone has a part to play in this. For example, let's look at the city here. There's most of the teachers come from the CUNY system, and they're hired by the city.
Yeah, but the problem is, as long as you brought that up, I have to, as you know, the problem I have as Vice Chairman of the Board of Trustees of City University is that we have an incredible situation where at City College, from which I graduated, over 60% of the students who get a degree in education cannot pass the teacher's exam.
Well, in fact,
that's outrageous.
There are only 3 institutions in CUNY that now meet the Regents standard, which is that you have to have 80% of your teacher graduates passing the state exam.
I know, but I mean, I mentioned City College, but it applies Medgar Evers, York, and others. How is it possible that the senior college can give a degree to someone who can't pass the exam?
Exactly. Good question. I can't answer that, but I think that I think the solution is to look at the public schools and CUNY as one system, regardless of how it's run. It's K-16, because CUNY provides the teachers and takes the students. The city public schools provides the students to CUNY and takes the teachers. Now, if those 2 institutions are expressing high standards, they help one another. If they're expressing low standards, they drive one another down.
Well, you and the Board of Regents are saying that unless the City University shapes up and rises to the level of 80 or 85% passing, that those colleges are going to be disqualified as colleges for teacher education.
That's right. I think we're all, the 2 of us here, a lot of people who work with us are in a position to link arms and help move this very complex system forward. Or we can say it's the other guy. If we focus only on our own piece and blame somebody else, it won't get better.
Well, there's also a movement, which Diane Ravitch also mentioned, to eliminate teaching education as such and have teachers be specialists in the area that is teaching in the area that they took in college. For example, you majored in history, right? Right. So therefore you could teach history, so you could be a teacher as you were at the Dalton School without having a degree in education. Would you support that movement? Well,
in fact, I do support the idea that students who want to teach should have a major in the field they're going to teach in. And if they go for a master's degree, graduate work, it should strengthen their understanding of the subject they're going to teach. In New York, 25% of the teachers who teach math never majored in math. I mean, how can you lift students to high standards in mathematics if you don't have a profound understanding of mathematics yourself?
Well, who makes that decision about hiring a teacher of math who never studied math or majored in math? Is it the Board of Regents, or is it the local school board or local chancellor?
There's kind of like a group of 3, and they all have to do their part. The deans of higher education have to produce teachers who really know their stuff. The people who hire the teachers, in this case the city, has to be careful about the hiring decision. People like me, Board of Regents, the State Education Department, we can't let people get licensed without a deep understanding. Now, I think we're making progress now because the deans, the city, the State Education Department are pointing in the same direction. We've got, as you pointed out, a long way to go. We've got to find 100,000 teachers in this decade.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll be back after this announcement.
Tom, where you going? doing? Hey, we got a ball game here. Pardon me.
Pitcher got a rubber arm. It's has. Huh? Pitcher has a rubber arm.
If education is important to you, talk to your child's school about raising academic standards. Call 1-800-38-BE-SMART for a free booklet and be a big league parent.
Our guest today is Dr. Richard Mills, who is the Commissioner of Education of the state of New York. And we've been talking about teacher education and the fact that at the City University, so many of the students who get a degree cannot pass the teachers, the test to be
State
teachers.
exam, right.
So then, papers recently have said that the Federal Commission, Secretary of Education has said that we have to have higher standards for teachers. Do you support that? And if you do, how are the teachers going to meet the higher standards when they can't even pass the current test?
Secretary Riley is right in focusing national attention on this. We have to find 100,000 teachers in the coming decade. That's how many will retire. But we don't have a recruiting package. The communities surrounding New York pay more. They provide a more supportive environment. We shouldn't be surprised that people are leaving.
Surrounding New York City, they pay more in the suburbs.
I've been in excellent New York City schools, and the principals there know that people are just cherry-picking the best teachers right out of there. We need to make sure that people, that institutions that prepare teachers are strong, that they really know what they're doing. We need to make sure that when people enter the classroom for the first time, they've passed an exam in the subject that they're going to teach. They need to be well prepared in the subject that they're going to teach at the undergraduate level and the graduate level. And we need to put a recruiting package in place. If we want to staff the South Bronx, why don't we have signing bonuses?
And we want to keep them in the South Bronx, because one of the problems I found when I was president of the Bronx is that they would go to the South Bronx originally, and after 3 years or so, they had the right to move out, and they moved out.
Sure. And everyone knows how excellent PS 31 is, for example, up there. People in Westchester know how excellent it is, and people can see the report cards, and they can go after the talent. So New York produces more teachers than it needs, way more than we need, but New York City needs about 7,000 a year. It's going to keep needing
So the
that.
crisis is only in the city, not in the rest of the state?
It's primarily in the city, in the cities, I would say in the big five, but you also see it in the rural areas as well.
Now, what would you say is the biggest and most important problem that you have as Commissioner of Education?
The biggest problem right now is to close the gap in performance that I see in the urban schools as compared to the rest of the state.
How big is the gap?
Well, let's 70% of the 12th graders last year passed the English Regents exam. So in other words, on average, we're within reach of where we want to be. In New York City, it's 59%. That's a gap.
Okay, now the answer that most people assume accounts for that is a race factor, that in the suburbs, the kids are predominantly white middle-class kids, whereas in the cities, they are, especially in New York City, predominantly African-American and Hispanic.
Well, we can't tolerate that as an excuse. The expectation has to be that all students are going to make it. Our competitors, places like Texas, for example, they don't make excuses for different ethnic groups. They say, all children, we must do the same. In New York City, we have to make sure that, and we should look at the facts here. Lower performance and lower spending, poorer quality of facilities, a weaker curriculum, all the capacity problems are there. We shouldn't be surprised if the performance isn't there either. But we can't accept what we have. We've got to drive performance up.
Well, another of the arguments that is used is the difference in support from the family, that they say that the kids in the urban centers don't have the same support because the parents may be divorced or maybe a single mother, whereas in the suburbs, the children have greater reinforcement from the home. How's that?
This could be so, but you know, when I wanted to make a television program about what parents could do, and I showed it statewide, I went to New York City, and there was a single mother in a minority community who gave the best example of what a parent needs to do. She lived in a very, very dangerous neighborhood. She took her kids to the library and sat them down and explained to them what they had to do. That was where homework was done. And then every morning you saw her on this film explaining to the kid, no, you be home, you be home on time, you do your homework. In other words, she expressed very, very high expectations. You don't have to be a literate person to make your children care about literacy. You have to set expectations, and that's not a rich-poor issue.
Okay, now you say that it's possible to bridge the gap between the children in the urban centers and the children in suburban centers.
Yes.
And you are now let's say you agreed to be Commissioner of Education for the next 10 years. How long would it take you to bridge that gap?
That's a great question. A life sentence, it sounds like to me. I think we've got to show very good results over the next 5 years, and we've got to be willing to stick it out for the next decade. And it's a battle that's fought every step of the way. For example, right now, we need state aid to increase by $885 million.
That's not much in a state as big as New York.
And in good times, such as we have now, we have momentum. We need to invest in the people who are trying to lift the performance of our young people.
Well, you know, the problem is that increasingly more and more people, I find, are getting dissatisfied with the public schools. And that has led to the charter school movement. Mm-hmm. And now the state of New York has approved 100 charter schools, which all have to eventually be approved by the Board of Regents. And the feeling is that if these schools are successful, there'll be more charter schools and even vouchers approved by the state of New York. What's your reaction to the charter school movement?
Well, that law wasn't enacted more than 5 hours before I called all my team together and I said, debate is over, this is law. New York charter schools are going to be the best in the country. We're going to make this thing work. And we will have 100 excellent charter schools, and if that's a great example and people want to have more, I say fine. The basic idea is that every child must have a good education. There's no safety if we don't.
Okay, now if somebody wants to start a charter school, how would they do it?
Well, the application materials will be available at the end of this month, and they will. There's not going to be a lot of regulation. It's going to be very simple. They have to lay out a plan of how they're going to do it, an educational plan, a financial plan, and so on. The governor's provided, and the legislature, I assume, will provide, when they vote on the budget, startup monies. Funds will come with the students from the public school that they now attend. And these are, after all, even the charter schools are public schools. Mm-hmm. We're working hand in hand with CUNY, the State University of New York, which also can work with community, groups.
They approve 50 schools.
Well, they present them actually. Mm-hmm. They don't actually issue the charter, but we're going to make that part of it work very smoothly as well.
Right, but even if charter schools prove to be as successful as their sponsors say, basically the educational system in the state of New York and in this country will remain in the public school area, that is, through the regular Board of Education, isn't that so?
Well, I think without
any... Do
any...
you think that things might change in the next 5 or 10 years to the extent that charter schools might even become 10, 20, 30, 40% of the public school system?
It's conceivable. Much depends on how we carry out this law. Arizona, for example, had the most charter schools in the country, has had some spectacular successes, but also some spectacular failures. We've got to make sure that this goes right.
What percentage of charter schools are there in Arizona?
Well, I couldn't tell you the percentage, but it's relatively much larger. It's a relatively large proportion of the entire number in the whole country, which is still a little bit under 1,000.
What about vouchers? Do you think that movement will succeed in the next few years?
I don't think so. I hope that it doesn't. I think in this country we've had a historic understanding that there must be a strong public education in a democracy. So I hope that this doesn't happen. It's easy to prevent. We simply have to deliver the results in the public schools.
All right, now let's talk about about higher education, because you cover all the areas. There's a report that was prepared by Public Agenda, nonprofit organization, in January of this year, and they said, and I'm reading directly from them, the most serious problem facing higher education, according to leaders responding to our survey, is that too many students are not sufficiently prepared academically to receive a higher education. The report said 88% of our respondents regard this as a problem, with a full 53% saying that it's a very serious problem. What do we do in the meantime with the young people who are coming into colleges but who are unprepared for college?
Well, New York certainly shares in this problem because we send a greater proportion of our high school graduates to college than any other state. It's over 70%. What do? We just press on to raise the standards, raise the competence, make certain that students pass real exams, Regents exams, take a real rigorous curriculum. If they do that, as we get into the early years of the next decade, we're going to find that this problem diminishes. If we weaken, if we show fear at a time when it's going to be very difficult to lead these changes, then this problem that they describe will get only worse.
And what do we do about remediation in the meantime, which is a problem we have now
We sure
at
do.
the City University? Because I don't see any likelihood, even though I'm pressing for it, that we'll be able to get high school graduates who are ready for college work in the foreseeable future.
Well, I'm eager to see the plan that, as I understand, the plans come from the colleges to the CUNY trustees in May. The plan to carry out the policy that you, as a member of the board, have adopted. And I'm sure you've grappled with that. I think we both know that if you have one remedial course, that's one thing. By the time you have 3 or 4, the likelihood of graduating is very, very, very low.
Well, clearly, we're going to have remediation at the very least at the community colleges, because it's impossible to get all those young people to meet the standards that you and I would like to have in the next year or two, right?
I think that's right. We have to find a way to bridge through the next 5 years or so. We've tolerated, we've institutionalized a system of education that has high standards for some and low for everyone else, and yet everybody goes to college. And now suddenly we're looking at the situation and saying that this can't work. This just can't be.
Well, we have to say goodbye, but unfortunately, I think you're going to have to be around for at least 10 years.
I hope that I am.
You can reach us by email at our website, www.cunytv.cuny.edu, to let us know what you think, or write to us at CUNY TV, 25 West 43rd Street, Suite 1220, New York, New York, 10036.